guys, today's lesson is all about counting jar. Hopefully you've had an opportunity to see a counting jar by now. And the counting jar in our classroom looks sort of like this. So it's a jar and it has some items inside for us to count. It's okay if you don't have a jar. You may have a counting bag or a counting box. Any collection that you've got together to count is a counting jar. So today, grab your counting jar, and then let's talk about what we're going to do to record our counting jar today. So I'm going to move the camera down where you can see what we are talking about. So I have my counting jar, and we have talked about how we count items, that it's very important that mathematicians have an accurate count. So the first thing I want to do is make sure that I take things out of my counting jar, because if I just leave them in there and try to start counting, I can't see accurately what's in my jar. One way I can count is taking each item out and counting one number for each item. So I could say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. All right, so I counted 8 as I took my items out of my counting jar. But another thing that we have discussed that good mathematicians do is we double check. So there's a couple ways I could double check. I could double check by putting things back in my counting jar. I could double check by touching each one. And notice that I tried to organize my things as I counted, which is another thing mathematicians do to help them get an accurate count. So I am going to double check today by doing my finger and touching each one, starting here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have 8 in my counting jar, and I'm remembering that I have 8 in my counting jar. Now, the other thing that we are going to be doing today is we always want to make an equal set. So I have a little bag here that says counting jar. I want to make a collection that is exactly the same amount as what was in my counting jar. And in math, we use the term equal. Equal means exactly the same. I'm going to use my snap cubes today to make a collection that is the same amount as what was in my counting jar, that is equal. And again, I'm going to use organization to help me keep track and make sure I have an equal amount. I'm going to place one cube on top of each of the items counted, each of the tiles, as I count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I had 8 tiles in my counting jar, and now I have made the same amount of snap cubes, 8 snap cubes. And I'm going to place my 8 snap cubes in my bag to show that I have made an equal set, or a collection that is the same amount. Finally today, we want to do something new. We want to record our counting jar in our counting jar booklet. So you should have a booklet, hopefully, and you're going to turn to the very first page in your booklet. Now it's super important because there's more than one page in a counting jar booklet. It's important that you put today's date at the top so that we know when you counted this counting jar. Ask for someone to help you with the date, or you can look in your classroom for what day is marked on your calendar. But it's very important to have that date on top. Now I'm going to move my tiles to the side, and we're going to talk about recording. If you're someone who has a really good memory, you might just remember how many things you counted in the counting jar. Oh, I heard somebody say it was 8. There were 8 things in the counting jar. Writing a number to show how many is one way to represent what was in your counting jar. What if you don't know how to make a number 8? Well, there are a few things you can do. If you have a number line handy, you can get a number line and you can start and count until you get to that number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. If I didn't know what 8 looked like, I could count until I got to that number and copy it on my paper, just like it looks on my number line. Another great place to look for numbers, if you're not sure how to write your number, is on a calendar. So maybe you have a calendar for this month at home. You can start at the first date and count until you find the number you need. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's the number 8. So I want to make sure I know how to write the amount that was in my counting jar and record it on my counting jar sheet. There are some other ways that I could show what was in there. Can you think of a way I could show what was in my counting jar today? Oh, I like that idea. I can organize my things by color. Those are attributes. We talked about attributes. Red is an attribute of these tiles, and blue is an attribute of these tiles. So I could show how many blue and how many red. Another great suggestion for making sure you accurately show that is you could trace what is in your jar if it's small enough to fit on your page. So I could trace 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Now remember, rock star mathematicians always double check. So I'm going to slide my blue and slide my red tiles off of here, and I'm going to number the boxes that I made to make sure all 8 tiles are drawn on my page. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Whoops, I think I did that one backwards. Trying to write upside down. 7 and 8. So I have 8 squares. Now, what about the friend who noticed that some of them were red and some of them were blue? Well, if you have crayons at home, you can actually show that as well. In your counting jar today, you can select a color that matches what was in your counting jar. And you can trace them or color them in to match. All right, friends, we can't wait to see how you represent what was in your counting jar and how you made an equal set.